Good morning. Happy New Year. I hope that 2024 is a good year for you and that you have some exciting developments ahead. 2023 was probably a difficult year. There was lots of things that were happening for me. We survived it, and hopefully that 2024 is a better year. I just wanted to talk to you about how I was approaching the new year and what I was trying to do. I talked a little bit last year about or in one of my previous videos about how I was looking at goals and certain things that I wanted to do to reconnect with the world, people, and also just have some more meaningful stuff in my life as well. I just want to expand on that a little bit more because I think what a lot of people go through at this point in time in their lives is about setting up new goals, setting up for the new year, getting things organized so that they can sort of say they're ready to hit the new year and that all the things that they want to do are in play. And those sort of things are what I want to sort of talk about, because at this point in time, there's a lot of talk about goals for the new year, goals for more than the current year, maybe in the future year. Depends on how you're going. And what I want to talk about is really setting those goals up correct, and also looking a little bit beyond goals and looking at your habits as well. I previously read a really good book. I think I talked a little bit about it, Atomic Habits. Really good book. And it talked about, the difference between goals and habits and how they can sort of complement one another, or how they can also sort of sometimes be a bit detrimental to each other. I think just looking at goals, first of all, sometimes we have some very big goals, like, a lot of people have a sort of exercise or diet or weight goals at the beginning of the year. It's always when things come out, I want to lose X pounds. I want to, do this amount of exercise. I want to get this level of fitness or stuff like that. There's also financial goals and things like that, or want to do these sort of things. And I think those things are excellent. It's really good to sort of put those things into your life, and then really start to sort of hone in and try and get those goals going. But I think once you look at those things, and if you do the usual things of making them SMART goals in terms of specific, measurable, results orientated, time specific. I'm never going to remember what A stands for, but all of those things, actionable, then it's quite good. But I think a lot of people then sort of stop and sort of say, okay, I've written out the goal. Now I've got to put that up on a wall. I've got to put that up, write it out. And those things are good, because you write something down, you're more likely to sort of go back to it, refer to it, really understand it. It also means that you understand what that goal is. So writing it down is very good. I think where it comes down to, if you have, if we use something like a goal like I want to run a marathon, and that has a lot of then connotations to it. You need fitness goals there. You need to be running. You probably need to change your diet a little bit so that you're actually getting the right foods into you if you want to sort of run a marathon, that you're removing fat so you're not carrying a lot of weight when you're running and stuff like that. So there's a lot of goals there. A lot of steps that you need to go as well, and sometimes that can be a bit of a problem as well, because having something like running a marathon is a pretty huge goal, and then you've got to sort of start to sort of break that down a little bit and sort of say, well, how are we going to measure that? How are we going to manage that? How are we actually going to get to that point that we're actually doing that goal? So there's quite a lot of things wrapped up in that, and that's where sometimes goals fall over. And that's where the idea of habits and starting habits small and building upon them can actually help you then to achieve those goals. And it's really then looking at not only what are you doing, but what is the process you're doing, and also always trying to make that process a little bit better so you get there. And in that book, Atomic Habits, the idea of running a marathon, or even just running, he has a really good, simple approach to that. And in terms of that, sometimes the first step is the hardest, as they always say. And so one of the things that he talks about in terms of changing this into more of a habit that's sustainable, because once you create a habit, you can then that habit will drive itself after a while once it becomes that habit. And so what we're trying to do is really bring that habit to the fore, so that in the end, the momentum from those habits actually make that simple. And he talks about this idea of the 2-minute habit. So if you're trying to get to a marathon, what's the first thing that you can do in order to get you on that road? And a lot of people would sort of say, oh, well, I can go for a run. Well, actually, that's even too far along, because if you've not gone for a run before, that can be quite daunting. If you sort of say, oh, I'll just go for a 5K run. I know myself, when I sort of said, oh, I want to get a little bit more fit, I sort of said, oh, well, I'll just run with the dog. Running up the road that I live on, by the time I got to the end of that road, which was probably, 500, 700 meters, I was puffed. And I won't say I'm the fittest guy. I won't say that I'm very unfit either. But if I hadn't run for probably 20 years, it's not something that's part of me. I do a lot of walking, so walking up to the end of the road, no problem. But running, slightly different. By the end of it, I was ready to collapse. I was ready to call the ambulance. I was ready to sort of say, pack it in and say, this running lark is for somebody else. And that's where it can be quite challenging if you sort of say, all right, I'm going to run 5K. Well, if you've not run for ages before, that can be quite daunting. And when you come back from that first run and you collapse in the door, well, your mind is sort of saying, that was bloody exhausting. That was bloody, I'm nearly feeling like I'm having a heart attack. We're not doing this tomorrow. And then the next day you might have some other thing that's in the way. And so suddenly it becomes something more difficult to get back to. But if you do it in much more smaller steps, and going for a run first is not the first step. The first step is really probably things as simple as having your running shoes out, putting them on, having your clothes out, putting them on, and then stepping out the door. And maybe the first thing that you do is you walk the 5Ks that you want to run. And then the next time, and all those steps might be quite big as well. It might be the first step might be just put your running shoes on and go to the door and go outside and then come back in and say, okay, well, I've got that. Then every day from those days on, you always put those running shoes on, so that becomes a habit. So you come home after work or whenever you want to do this, you put those running shoes on and you go out the door. And that's that habit. And then as soon as you start doing that habit constantly, then you can change it into, okay, well, I've got my shoes on, I'm outside the door, I may as well go for a run, or I may as well go for a walk, whatever it happens to be. But that is much easier than to look at this huge goal of, first of all, of the marathon, which is like enormous, but then also looking at this idea of going for a 5K run. That's pretty enormous too for those people who haven't been doing any running. If you have been doing some running, well then, different story. You might already be up to 5Ks. You might already be up to 10Ks. So, different steps. So then it might be stepping through how do I get to those things in first. But, if we're talking about a lot of people, they start off in these huge goals and they want to achieve them, I won't say quickly, but, they want to achieve them by the end of the year, but they haven't even got any sort of habit in place that allows them to do those things. So something like, pulling apart wanting to run a marathon might be as simple as the first step is really getting an idea of getting into your clothes, going on a jog, a run, whatever you want to call it, walking it first, walking it with your dog first or something like that. Sometimes it's, you also might want to have an accountability with somebody, works with somebody else who might want to do a similar sort of goal. And so therefore, if you're struggling to get out of work with getting out of the house with the job, if you hear that knock on the door to sort of say, or the text to sort of say, you ready? I'm waiting outside. Well, that might be just a little bit more like, oh, okay, I better go. I don't want to disappoint such and such. So that can be slightly different than in terms of how you approach that. So goals are fantastic, and you need to sort of really have those to sort of have something to strive for. But what you really need to do is make sure that you start having the base habits to make sure that you've got an opportunity and a potential way to meet that, to get to that successful point. And I think changing those habits, getting those habits there is probably a good one. In terms of taking back to that marathon sort of thing, if you want to do that marathon, well, then you might have to change some of your eating habits and some of the things that you eat or some of the things that you do. And so therefore, if you have that, you might then sort of start to sort of look at things a little bit different. Well, if I'm going to put my running shoes on after this, I don't want to then go and sort of say I'm going to have something to eat that's actually going to be detrimental to the running that I'm doing, or the fitness level that I'm coming up for. So a lot of those things need to sort of process and change in your thought capacity to allow you to make those changes. So that's a really huge example there in terms of running and going for a marathon. But hopefully that idea, I think it's fairly simple. People have that, is have a goal. You need to break it down. Some people might be really good at breaking those down. But then what you need to do is make sure that you start to sort of work through what are the habits that I need to put in place in order for this to become a success. And once you have those habits in place, then you can start to sort of know that you will be carrying your momentum through, and it'll become a lot easier because, you know, all you're doing is building on those habits. So if you need to do your running and you've got a habit of putting on your shoes as soon as you come home from work or come home from something else, or at 5 o'clock you pick up the kids from some sort of activity and then you put on your running shoes, suddenly that becomes something that's ingrained and your body will automatically do it, and so then it'll become easier to get out the door. But if you're not built that habit that, okay, at this point in time every day I'm going to do this, and you just take it, I'll do it when I've got time in your day. We know how busy we are. I've done a video on busyness. Every moment of the day is normally filled with lots of different stuff that we could do, and sometimes we're triple and four times booked. So we need to put this in as a habit so that we can actually then sort of, it can be self-fulfilling, and we can sort of do that. So I think, as I sort of said, goals, fantastic, but please look at the goals and try and build your habits for success. There is a lot of things that you can sort of do there that you can really make sure that you've got a good chance of reaching those big goals. And the best tools that we have as human beings is the habits we form and the habits that we have. So if you can look at those, look at them, work them out, make them to your advantage to actually bring that. So for the new year, I wish you all the best. I wish you all the luck in the world. I really hope that you have a safe 2025. You have a healthy 2024. I said 2025. So safety's next year. This year's healthy. And then also just that you achieve the things that you'd like to achieve. Whatever they happen to be, and also continue to be kind to yourself and to continue to be good to yourself as well. Anyway, look after yourself. Hope that the Christmas period and the festive period was good for you. I know it's sometimes difficult to get back into the swing of things, especially with holidays, especially in Australia with the summer holidays that come on. It's sometimes difficult to sort of get back into work mode. So I wish you all the best, and hope that you are doing well. All right, I look forward to seeing you and talking to you more during 2024. And if you enjoy the channel, please pass it on. I hope it is actually beneficial to you. All right, look forward to talking to you again later.